What do you say, everybody? Great to talk to you. It's time for Monday Night Quarterback. Talking Alabama football here on YouTube. He's Trey Yanity. I'm Mick Gillispie, and we try to cover Alabama like a blanket. Lots to talk about on our show tonight. We do this every Monday night at 6 o'clock, and of course, it's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. You know, walking distance to everything in Tuscaloosa, including the Strip, including the Quad. Denny Chimes. Maybe you want to go to a football game 200 feet away. And on game days, the Skygate Club on the roof is, really fantastic. That's where we actually do our post-game show. Find out more information at westgateal.com. And like and subscribe. Look, like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. 75,000 plus subscribers. We're trying to get to over 100,000 so that we can match Bryant-Denny Stadium on a game day. Like and subscribe. And for those of you that are hanging out, and I see that you're already hot and heavy in the comment section, we appreciate you guys being there as well. All right, well, let's get into it. Terrible news today coming out of the NFL. One of the all-time great Alabama receivers, Calvin Ridley, who is a member of the Atlanta Falcons, was suspended for the entire year because he gambled on football. Apparently, he picked the Falcons in a 6-8 team parlay. And for those of you that don't gamble, those bets are like basically impossible to hit. I mean, they're like, it's like a Hail Mary in a football game. But he broke the rules, and the suspension is for 1 year. He's been tweeting about it, and the NFL, Trey, put out a statement. Your thoughts?
This is, this is surprising if nothing else. I mean, if we look at the entire existence of the league, this has only happened 5 times, and 2 of those guys were in on the same scandal. This is only the second time that somebody has been suspended, caught for gambling in the NFL since 1983. So, I mean, this is really, a rare thing to happen. Very surprising. And as Bama fan is saying here in the comments, how sad is it to look at some of these former receivers from Bama now, just in this past year? It's been a tough one. And Calvin Ridley, obviously a much different case here, but a weird one. And my first thought was, how does anybody find out about something like this? It was during his time off. He had decided on Halloween that he was going to take some time away from football for mental health. And, I believe that this went down in the month of November, a little bit later on. Like you said, I mean, he put him in a parlay. This wasn't him taking the Falcons straight up when he was going to line up at wide receiver or anything like that. He was out of the game of football at this point. He even says, in some of these tweets, he wasn't even able to watch the games at this point. So it's not like, he was sitting there really with skin in the game. He just did this for fun. And obviously this is going to really affect his career, which is unfortunate because this is something so slight. This is something that you don't even really think about. Betting on your own team when you're not playing probably shouldn't be a suspension, but unfortunately, this is just the way the rules work. And I think we kind of saw that with Roger Goodell's response, his letter to Calvin Ridley today, just kind of explaining, hey, we're just not allowed to do this. This is a serious offense in our league. You knew that when you signed your contract, and we're going to have to suspend you appropriately. The other guy that's done it since 1983 was suspended back in 2019. And during that suspension, it was a very similar deal. It was a player that wasn't playing at the time, and a guy that had just kind of bet on his team, I guess playfully. I don't want to say unknowingly, because this is something that the NFL takes very seriously. And I think Calvin Ridley maybe understood that, but didn't really think that this was going to come back to get him, because this is something that is just so slight and playful, and something that probably shouldn't have been found out. From what it was reported at ESPN.com to David Purnham, the NFL has sources with these gambling websites, with these gambling organizations in Vegas, and that's how they found out about this. I think a 1-year suspension, while it's probably not fair for something so slight, it really isn't that big of a deal to Calvin Ridley. We saw him respond, as you can see here in the tweets. He's taken it pretty well. He said in one of them, this is another year where I can get more healthy. He says there in that one tweet, I know I was wrong, but I'm getting 1 year, LOL. So, it was good to see at least he responded to it positively on Twitter, but just a really surprising kind of breaking news tidbit to get on this Monday.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by the penalty. I mean, look, the biggest gambling casualty as far as players or managers go was a guy that did both, Pete Rose in baseball, right? And he was betting on his team to win, and and it was a much different situation. He might have even bet on his team to lose. He bet on his team all the time, from what we understand. I found this to be ridiculous. A year suspension. Look, 4 or 5 games is one thing, but an entire year for a parlay bet of 6 or 8 teams, look, that's not by any means using the fact that you're playing on a team to try to win money, because those bets are such a shot in the dark in the first place. I mean, like, you could pick 8 favorites and still lose on a parlay, right? I think it's excessive. The other part of this is there's a few things that bother me about this, Trey. First off, the NFL is popular because of fantasy football, which is kind of a form of betting, right? The other thing is that when you watch the games and stuff like that, there's betting ads and everything on there. They're making money off of gambling. Should players be able to bet on their teams? No. And is what Calvin Ridley did wrong? Yes, because to battle for the integrity of the game, and I know Pete Rose, met him before. I like Pete Rose. I understand why baseball hasn't let Pete back in. I wish that maybe one day that would happen. But regardless, this isn't a Pete Rose situation. This is listen, man, take your 2 games off or your 3 games off, and we're going to set an example. And I still think that that's probably what's going to eventually happen when they appeal. That is, they're going to look at this and go, you know what, maybe 4 games here. But the thing that bothers me is you look at that situation with Ray Rice, who knocked his girlfriend out in an elevator, and the NFL was like, okay, you know what? Originally, they were set for 2 games on that. This is a guy with what would they say, a 6-game or an 8-game parlay, $1,500. Like, that's for millionaires. That's like making a $5 bet. Sorry.
No, it is. And that's, something he made clear from the jump. It was just $1,500. And for an everyday gambler like you or I, we hear $1,500 on a sports bet. And that's a lot of money. But for an NFL player, that's not really a ton of money to throw out on a Sunday to just kind of entertain yourself with some action on football. And, I think the biggest thing here is the NFL just needs to add more context to any suspension. I mean, you look at, gambling, and you really have to look into the context of it. Like you said, this isn't a Pete Rose situation. I think Pete Rose does need to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but that's another story for another day. This is not that, though. This is a guy that, gambled in a small period of time with a small amount of money in games that, he wasn't playing with. And they did uncover this. This is something we talked about, in our pre-show meeting. The NFL did an investigation. They found no evidence that Ridley used insider information. They also found that he didn't have contact with any players, any coaches, anybody with the team. So, there was no kind of meddling involved at all. You need to take that context into play because, if it is a Pete Rose situation, or if we're going to throw it way back to, Shoeless Joe Jackson, those guys were involved in the game in some form or fashion. Calvin Ridley was not involved in these games at all. This is my personal take. This probably will never become the rule. Shouldn't maybe become the rule, but I think if you're betting on yourself to win a game, money line straight up, that should probably be allowed because you're not going to throw the game in any form or fashion if that's the case. But even this is something that's so much more playful than that. He wasn't there. He didn't even watch the games. He bet a small amount of money. You have to take that context into play when you give out a suspension because like you said, like somebody made a good point with in the comments right at the start of the show, there's, a lot of different ways to get suspended in the NFL. And we've seen some pretty malicious actions taking place and maybe guys that haven't received some suspensions that were deserving and other guys that are now receiving a suspension for something that isn't quite as deserving. Makes you scratch your head a little bit. So just more context if you're Roger Goodell is my biggest takeaway. But this is, this is another sad storyline for Calvin Ridley.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's not over yet. He can appeal this. Obviously he took some time off last year for, stuff that was outside of normal football injuries. He's a great football player and one of the greats that's ever been, in an Alabama uniform. Never had an issue at Alabama, was nothing but just a complete superstar and a class act. And I'm really surprised by this. The other thing is, you mentioned it too. Like he bet on an app in Florida that lasted like a couple weeks, and I guess it got shut down or something. Like it wasn't even around that long. Maybe he didn't even know that. What he was getting into. This is not a situation to me. I don't think the punishment fits the crime here.
Not at all. I mean, this is a guy that's already spent so much time away from the game. I think we all want to see him back. And for something that is, kind of petty to an extent, it really isn't a fitting suspension. I think, something needs to be done to set that precedent, to keep that precedent of very serious implications if you bet on the NFL, if you're a player, coach, whatever the case may be. But that's where the context comes into play. And you have to really look at this one and say, well, he didn't play. He wasn't there. Give him maybe 4 games. I think that would be fair. Maybe 3 or 4 games. Slap on the wrist or something like that. But a season is a lot, and that's the least suspension he could see. They're going to review that on February 15th, 2023 is when he can make his first appeal to rejoin the league if his appeals at this point don't do anything for him. So this is just a really weird situation, and one that you hope has some positive headlines coming out in these next few weeks. The NFL realizes that this isn't that big of a deal, but at this point, they're sticking to that precedent and, playing hardball with him, giving him a year.
Yeah, definitely not what I was expecting today, and really just terrible, just terrible. And hopefully that things will get turned around, and this will be one of those things that he learns from, Calvin Ridley learns from, maybe the rest of the players in the league learn from it, because gambling's changed a lot. It used to be if you wanted to gamble on sports, you had to fly out to Vegas and do it out there, or you paid your local bookie. Now it's an app. I mean, like if you're in Tennessee or, in Florida or places that have sports gambling, maybe you go over to Pearl River Resort and Choctaw, Mississippi, you can go do it there. It just was so hard in years past and kind of underground. And now that it's, a lot more open, I'm not surprised that somebody got popped, but I just hate that it's Calvin Ridley.
Right. And, after the Henry Ruggs news and, everything going on right now too, it's just a tough headline. But hopefully this is like Henry said in his tweets, another year off. I mean, not Henry, like Calvin said in his tweets, another year off for him to get healthier and, get his mind right. Because I think once he gets back, he is going to be fully mentally healthy and, ready to go, because this is something that I think will motivate him, hopefully. And, we'll teach him a lesson on how strict the NFL can be at times, because they obviously don't play around at all.
He's Trey Yanity. I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out with us on Monday Night Quarterback, talking Alabama football on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up as we talk about things that concern the Crimson Tide. And another thing that concerns the Crimson Tide that's going on right now is the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Alabama's going to have some players that will go in the draft. It's not going to be like last year, folks, where we're waiting the entire first round for the next Alabama guy to be picked. I mean, and how much fun was it watching? We even did a show last year during the draft because it was one after the other, right? Evan Neal's going to go in the first maybe 5 picks, could go number 1, just depending on how that all shakes out. Then after that, I don't know. But we've got guys that are at the Combine right now, Trey, trying to get ready to get picked. Some guys that we know are going to get picked, like Phil Mathis. Some guys like Slade Bolden, not so sure about. These are opportunities for these guys. Jalen Armour-Davis, one of those guys, Christian Harris, to get out there and make an impression.
This is it. This is another piece of this process, and we've talked about it. And, the last couple of weeks, this is a different combine. This isn't a combine where it's spaced out. The players get a chance to do their interviews, weigh in, have all that, workouts on a separate day than their on-field stuff. This year was all kind of on the same day. And, I think we saw the numbers kind of, resemble that. I don't know if this was a great combine for a lot of Bama guys. If I'm going to be completely honest, it was a very mediocre combine for many that came from Alabama. For Slade Bolden, he had a 4.66 40. That was last among wide receivers. His vertical was at 32 inches. That was ranked near the bottom as well. Not a great combine for Slade Bolden. That's not to say he's not going to get drafted. It's not going to say he can't go have a great pro day and, make up that lost ground. But, overall, to start with Slade Bolden, not the best day in the world. If we look around at other guys, kind of in that same realm of, on the brink, and guys that we've talked about as, potential non-draftees, even Brian Robinson Jr. came across an injury. I don't know if you heard about that this week. He tried to run his first 40-yard dash and pulled his right hamstring, tried to run a second one and, kind of iced it afterwards. So, a tough bit of news there for Brian Robinson as he tries to do everything he can to improve that stock, get drafted in general. It was a pull, no tear. So I think he's going to be fine for pro day. He should be able to, keep that stock at least where it is, but wasn't able to register the 40 time he wanted because of all that. He had a 30-inch vertical, which was near the bottom, not at the very bottom there, 119-inch broad jump, which was around the middle of the pack. So not the worst combine in the world for Brian Robinson Jr. But overall, these are the two guys we focused on these last 2 weeks, is guys kind of on the brink, and would like to see a little bit more. For Brian Robinson, it was about being healthy, and he wasn't able to stay healthy at this combine. For Slade Bolden, just didn't perform to that standard we hoped he would have to improve his stock at all.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what these opportunities are for. And for Slade Bolden, I feel like Brian Robinson's going to end up finding a team. We know what Christian Harris can do. Obviously, he was hurt first game of the season last year. So we don't, he didn't have the whole season to go out there and prove himself. But he's played in the past. He's gonna end up getting drafted. He's going to be on the team. Slade Bolden, I feel like, has to take advantage of these opportunities because as much as I like him, and I do, I just don't know that now was the time to make this move. And if he doesn't go into these combines and pro days and make a good impression, it's going to be tough for him to find a job in the NFL. Is that fair?
Oh, and I mean, no doubt. He kind of knew, I think, his situation coming into this. He was going to have a little bit of an uphill battle. Like I said, I think pro day is more important for him. He's going to be with his, teammates, his coaches. He's going to be in a more personal setting around maybe, more coaches that are interested in him because they're coming for just a few guys on that day. So I think pro day is for a lot of guys, not just Slade Bolden, not just Alabama, everywhere around the country. Pro day might have a little bit more value than the combine this year just because the combine is so weird. The rules kind of limit these guys to an extent. So not the end of the world for Slade Bolden, but, he certainly could have used this to his advantage and didn't really do that. Not many guys, like I said, from Bama really did that. And there's certain guys that didn't have to do that. Phidarian Mathis, we know is going to be a force in the NFL, is going to get paid a lot of money next year to play the game. But, he finished 6th in broad jump at 109 inches, but he was last in the 20-yard cone shuffle, second to last in his vertical jump as well.
Let me ask you this, Trey, not to interrupt you.
No.
When you're 6th in the cone shuffle, does that take you out?
The cone shuffles, it's a big deal nowadays. It's agility. He had 4.91 on the cone shuffle, but the very basic stuff, the vertical jump, was not very good for Phidarian Mathis. But like I said, this is a guy that doesn't really have to worry about it. Evan Neal didn't even, do these measurables. He just weighed in and did his interviews because he doesn't have to worry about it. He's a possible number 1 pick. John Mechie, Jameson Williams, of course, not able to work out. Josh Jobe decided not to participate in the on-field drills this year either, which was a little bit surprising to me, but, he's going to be a high stock guy too. So he doesn't really feel like he needs to show off, some of these measurables here. Jalen Armour Davis was 9th when it came to speed. He had a 4.39 on his 40, 9th in cornerbacks. And, his stats kind of fell off after that as well. He had a 34.5-inch vertical jump. That was tied for last. His bench press was last among the cornerbacks as well. So just, tough few days for these Bama guys at the combine, statistics wise, but there were some high points. There were some highlights for guys like Christian Harris. He finished in the upper middle of the pack overall, had a 4.44 on his 40, which is solid. And, he had a 34.5 vertical, which is very solid as well in his position group. So, overall, it didn't leave you feeling great about the Bama guys, but you got to hope that they turn it around for pro day. And I think a lot of them will. It's just going to be a better setting for these guys to work out in this season.
Yeah. I mean, and there's still more time to go, but some teams, they really ride on this, and some teams, they just use it as part of the formula to figure out who they're going to pick and where those guys will end up. Hey, Hank, as you guys hang out with us tonight, make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Talking Alabama on YouTube. This is Monday Night Quarterback, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. He's Trey Yanity, and I'm Mick Gillispie. And on our channel, constantly we're covering the Crimson Tide, whether it's recruiting with Andrew Bone, whether it's Trey giving you the updates on what's going on with Alabama when news breaks, Kyle Henderson, Chris Daughtry, our entire crew. We appreciate you being here with us, and we want you to be a part of that. So like and subscribe and give us a thumbs up. All right. Alabama football practice is about to start. They have set the first practice date. We know when the 8A game is going to be. It's exciting.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this is it. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're finally here. And it's kind of felt long but short at the same time for these guys. But I think ultimately, just get this first day and get to see a lot of these youngsters. It's going to be huge because we haven't really got any footage of Ty Simpson. We haven't seen Emmanuel Henderson, Jamarion Miller, some of these offensive guys that I'm really excited to see. And on the other side of the ball, you have some exciting pieces as well. Chris Allen, get in the comments there. He knows the importance of the cone shuffle, so I appreciate you doing that. We need other people in the comments. Let me know how you feel about the cone shuffle. It's a big deal. This is exciting. I mean, this is what we wait for through February. We have to get you through the end of January into spring practice, and like you said, 8A, it's going to be right around the corner too. So I think the biggest thing to focus on early on, in spring practice is the receivers, because you're already going to have a young group, and then you added even more youth to that. You got Kobe Prentice coming in, Kendrick Law, these kind of guys joining up with, Jermaine Burton, the transfer. They're all new faces. And then you got a lot of youngsters to kind of just mellow the rest of the group out. Christian Leary coming back. Jai Hall, going to be really excited to see, kind of what he looks like in the spring. Did he use the national title as motivation, or, are we going to see the same kind of behavior from Christian, or from Jai Hall rather? Ja'Cory Brooks, some of these other guys, JoJo Earl, I think they're going to look night and day better, because you see that with so many guys at Alabama, especially in the receiving core. They've been spoiled in the past half decade. You get Jerry Jeudy, who was electric from the jump, Henry Ruggs, these guys. But I think this group could really take a big step. They're going to have to, because, you lose John Mechie, Jamison Williams. But that's who I'm going to be looking out for first at spring practice. Going to have Saban at the end of the week. Going to, hear his thoughts. Excited to, kind of see how he addresses this new group, because I think this is, one of the best groups we've had in a while here. And this is truly the start of it. They've gone through the fourth quarter program now, and we're all dogs go for Friday practice.
Look, I was going to ask you, what were you looking for leading up to the 8A game, but you kind of, hit it for me, and that's the receivers. And I want to say this. I want to put some caution out there. We don't know what we have. We know we got Ja'Cory Brooks, and he's a pretty good piece, right? What he did in the Iron Bowl. Jai Hall's a lot of talk and not a lot of action right now. So he's got a lot to prove. He's a player that I could see transferring out if he doesn't have a good spring, because he may get buried on the bench. What does Burton look like? The transfer, right? Alabama has the best quarterback in the country. And because Slade Bolden decided to go to the NFL, they have the most inexperienced group of receivers that you could ask for, unless something changes. And spring practice could turn out to be the time when Hall shows off his talent, not as a person writing tweets, but as a football catcher. But it also could be the time where other players from around the country look and say, you know what, Alabama doesn't have the wide receiver playmakers that we thought they had. I mean, we thought Butte might transfer from LSU. And honestly, I heard that if it wasn't for grades, that might have happened, and it didn't. I'm sure there's some wide receivers that are out there like Jamison Williams watching, going, you know what, this is where we're going to see what Alabama's doing, because I can go and make those catches that Bryce Young's going to throw up there for me. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think Jermaine Burton, recognized that and is going to take advantage of that this season. I don't know who's the answer out of this young group, but I think you immediately turn to one fresh face, and that is Jermaine Burton. I think you have to work him into the offense immediately and kind of make him your Jamison Williams from this past year. Different style of receiver. He's not going to run nearly as many deep balls. I don't see him returning kickoffs either or anything like that, but he is a veteran. and he's a guy that can add that depth and experience that this group needs, because I think, maybe there's not one or two or three guys to turn to. I think we could see a rotation. JoJo Earl looked great last year at times, and so did Ja'Cory Brooks, and so did Christian Leary when they got their opportunities. So, work all these guys in. Trayshawn Holden, he's waiting for his chance too. Why not Trayshawn Holden, or maybe somebody we're not even talking about at this point. But overall, I love the look of this group. It's so young, it has a lot of talent, a lot of ceiling. Like you said, maybe this could fall apart. It does have quite the floor as well, but I like the upside here. And another group that I think is so interesting too is this running back room. I mean, you lose Brian Robinson and you get guys coming back, but you also have some fresh faces like Jahmyr Gibbs, like some freshmen, Emmanuel Henderson, these kind of guys. What does this group look like? I mean, who do they, who's running back number 2, 3, 4? Because I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to come in and be running back number 1. We've heard so much about him, how great he is. And we saw it at Georgia Tech too. I mean, he was dominant. But, after that, you got Jace McClellan coming back. You have Trey Sanders. How do you work these guys into the fold and mix it up enough? Because I think last season, and I don't know if this is, the fault of Bill O'Brien, maybe another offensive mind, or maybe even Nick Saban. I don't know who you point to here, but it didn't feel like we had that mix and match of running backs when they were all healthy that I thought we would see. And, we got to see them all due to injury, but I hope this season they come out and, find a way to work in each of these guys, because they're all so talented. And, this group is going to be maybe a 3-4 headed monster. So just use it that way.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And I can't wait to see what Gibbs looks like in an Alabama uniform. So another reason to watch the 8A game. Alabama healthy, Chase McClellan. You guys know I love him. I think if Alabama had a healthy McClellan, they beat Georgia and win the national championship. I think losing him was one of the key losses of the season. They definitely wouldn't have lost to Texas A&M. I mean, and last year was a year that was just sprite with injuries. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Alabama figures out who that feature back is. And who knows, Trey, maybe it's someone that we're not even thinking of. Maybe somebody comes out of nowhere.
We saw Christian Leary kind of work out with him last year a little bit. Hey, maybe Jalen Milroe. Kylan had a video this morning. He wasn't too keen on the idea of moving Jalen Milroe away from quarterback, but the dude's built like a running back.
Right.
I don't disagree with it until Bryce Young's time is up.
Yep, no doubt. Guys, like and subscribe as you hang out with us on Monday Night Quarterback, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. If you're in the market for a condo, you maybe want to make some rental revenue. Hey, these things are always going to rent. They're right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium, westgateal.com. You're talking about 1 to 5 bedroom units, 900 to 3,000 square feet. They're beautiful. The overspacious balconies. You got the Sub-Zero and Wolf kitchens that are amazing. They're absolutely luxurious, and they're fantastic. WestgateAL.com. Parking's great, too. And you're talking about parking. I mean, I parked right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium under Westgate Luxury Condominiums, like before the football game. And when you have a unit, you get to park there. You're not going to find a better parking spot anywhere on
Wi-Fi.
Game day. Yeah, and the Wi-Fi is amazing.
Oh, my God. It probably reaches my house. I'm like a mile and a half off of the strip. It is the best Wi-Fi in town. And the food, the buffet, I don't want to add on too much here because you guys got to check it out for yourselves. But, yeah, they kill it over there. That's
why during Lent, I'm on the no-carb diet, because the food was so good at Westgate Luxury Condominiums and at the Skygate Club. No, it was part of the reason. But we had a great time over there. We'll be there, I'm sure, post-game right here on this channel after Alabama football this year when the Tide plays at home. All right, we're going to switch gears now and talk basketball. That's because the regular season is over. Alabama finishes 6th in the SEC. I don't want to say that it was a disappointing season, but I didn't feel like the Tide reached their potential. It could have been a lot better. All said and done, they lose their final 2 regular season games, a thriller in overtime against LSU, and then that was in Baton Rouge, right, on Saturday. And then the one on Wednesday, after our Wednesday show, was just pathetic, right? The loss to Texas A&M. But they're a 6th seed. They'll play Thursday in the tournament, the SEC tournament. Last year, they won that tournament, Trey.
They did. The sky's the limit. I don't know if they're going to do that again this season, but You say disappointing. I don't know yet. If I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know. I mean, we're going to look back at this season and say, you remember that year that Alabama beat Gonzaga and Baylor and Houston? That was insane. How did they do that? But, we're also going to look back and say, remember that year that Alabama lost to Missouri and Georgia and Texas A&M at home? And, just some of these games, Davidson, Memphis. The fact that this team is still probably going to be a 5 or 6 seed is amazing with those losses I just named. But, it's also amazing that this team isn't a 1 or 2 seed with those names I just, mentioned. So I don't want to say it's disappointing yet, because this team could go win the SEC championship, the tournament at least. And, they could make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. The sky is the limit for this team. We've seen that all throughout the year. I think they play to the energy of their opponent. I don't really know, what we saw against Texas A&M on Wednesday. That was a hot Texas A&M team that plays really good defense. Team that, needed a win desperately, after they had lost several in a row there, and a bubble team too that had some motivation. But, when this team gets up, when they have the energy, when they guard the perimeter correctly, and they, have the shots fall, they win almost every single game they play.
Right.
For Nate Oates, what can you do to motivate these guys, to get them in that mindset, to make every single game Baylor or Gonzaga? I think, luckily for him at this point, it's kind of just naturally how the end of the season plays out. You're going to, probably play Vanderbilt in this first round game on Thursday. Maybe Georgia, it would be a chance for revenge. You mold that storyline there. And then, literally the rest of your games are dogs and, big time opponents or big time games. So I don't think he's going to have to do a whole lot to get this team up. They would then go play Kentucky. It's another chance to get redemption there. You have a chance to go play for the SEC semifinal after that, SEC championship potentially.
Right.
Then you get to the tournament, and, when you're in the tournament, every game is intense. Every game just has that energy naturally, and I think this team feeds off of that. So, I still like this team's chances. I don't want to say this is a disappointing season, because there's been so many fun moments, so many highs. The fans were allowed to come back this year, and they saw some incredible basketball on the home floor. But, really, really weird season, maybe the weirdest college basketball season I've ever followed in my entire life. I think a lot of people would tell you that, but it's not over yet, so it could get even weirder.
Got a toast to Luke Ratliff, Fluffopotamus, right?
Yes.
Lindsay and all the crew that would go to the basketball games back in the day. I miss Fluff so much. And when this time of year happens, I'd be like, Fluff, tell me why Alabama's going to win, because that he always thought Alabama was going to win, right? With the plaid coat and the hard hat. And he would convince me that by the time I finished talking to him that Alabama was going to win the tournament. And I feel like Alabama could win this tournament. And I think the SEC is the best it's ever been this year in basketball, which is crazy to think, right? But it's the best that it's ever been. I mean, like in all the years. Now, I don't go back to Sonny Smith and Wimp Sanderson. This was before my time, okay? I didn't see C.M. Newton, my buddy Wendell Hudson, great basketball player. I didn't know Coach Hudson as a player, so I can't tell you about that. But I'm saying in my time, including the year that Alabama barely got into the tournament and ended up in the Elite Eight in the NCAAs, that this is the best that the SEC's ever been. The top 4 teams never lose at home. There is a dogfight to be in that top 4. Any other year, this Alabama team would probably have been in the top 3, right? But looking at this bracket, it is tough. I mean, they're going to play Vanderbilt because Georgia's the worst team probably in my time in the SEC. Like they won one game against Jekyll and Hyde, Alabama, right? And that's it. Scottie Pippen Jr., we were kind of going back and forth on this earlier today. It's going to rematch against Alabama. Who knows how many free throws he's going to take, right? They're going to have to get by that. They played 2 games against Kentucky. Both of them were battles, and they had the lead at halftime in Lexington, and at one point it was double digits. They let it slip away. You got to win that. Oh, and then the prize to win that one is that you might have to play Tennessee, right? And then if you win that, you got to play Auburn or Arkansas, right? Which is probably how this thing's gonna bust out. But I could see them making a run. What I will say is that this is a deep conference.
It's not just that it's deep, but this season, kind of in parity to a lot of seasons, it's maybe deeper than any other conference. Usually when the SEC is deeper, looking like they do this year, the ACC is the daunting ACC, and, other conferences step up, and the Big 12 is excellent. I mean, that is elite basketball this season. The Big 10 is weird, very solid at the top, but the SEC is just so deep in comparison to the rest of the conferences in the country, not just at the Power 5 level. There's some really good mid-major basketball this year as well, but why not Alabama here? This is a tournament that Alabama has won within the last calendar year. They have players that can stretch the floor against teams like Kentucky. Oscar Tshiebwe is the best player in the country. I think that is kind of the consensus thought at this point. But Alabama also has one of the best backcourts in the country when they want to show up. They get great guard play when they want to perform. And like I said earlier, what kind of energy are they going to bring? If they bring that energy, everything just kind of kicks into place. It's crazy how, when you see them guard the perimeter with a lot of energy and, get out in space and really guard the baseline as well, how their offense starts to pick up a little bit and they score in transition and, they speed up the game a little bit and put the other team out of their rhythm. They can do that in this tournament just the same. You have to rebound the basketball. That's the reason they beat Memphis. Why can't they beat Kentucky doing the same thing? Box out Tshiebwe, figure out a way to guard Ty Washington, the rest of this group. But anything can happen in tournament style play in the game of basketball. And, I think Luke Ratliff would tell you that too. And as we come up, on the 1 year, anniversary of his passing, I know that this team is still with him. He's still with them. And, he's still with these students as they close it out here the rest of the season. And I see Lindsey Blackett in the comments. I know she was right there with them. I know so many people are still affected by Luke and what he meant to this university all the time. And I know that his legacy is going to continue with this program. They're going to put on for him again this year as they did last season. And, I think that they're really going to have a good chance at this thing. Maybe not the SEC tournament, but they're going to have a chance to make a run because this team, while they've lost, some incredibly embarrassing games, like you said, to Georgia, who almost beat Auburn, by the way, as well. But, they have some incredible wins, on the other side of that too. And I think they're going to use those to their advantage when they try to find motivation for this. They're going to get the seeding because of it. That would, allow a favorable first round, second round matchup in the tournament. And, then they're just going to go from there. Why not with this team? I think energy is where you start. Rebounding, throughout the rest of this tournament. I've said it all season long. I sound like a broken record, but guarding the perimeter when you're playing defense and, just find a way to put the ball in the hoop.
Yeah, look, Keon Ellis has been really good down the stretch. I think they need to get him the ball more. J.D. Davidson, you know what? Don't be worried about the NBA. Just be worried about knowing where to shoot the basket when you get into a spot late in a game and they feed you the ball, right? How frustrating was watching him against LSU, but he's a freshman. I mean, that's a freshman mistake. When he's there, doesn't know where to go with the ball. Alabama has the guards to make a run in this tournament. And if they get hot and hit those threes, I mean, there's no telling how far this team can go. I just wonder, Trey, between you and me, and, we'll just keep this between us, but, is the prospect of going to the NBA more important than playing your best basketball in college for guys like Shackelford and Quinterly? And let's be honest, like, where are you going? I mean, you going to be in the G League? Or are you going to really be on an NBA roster? I don't see any Herb Joneses on this team.
Oh, I think it's guy to guy. I think Herb Jones was the kind of guy that really wasn't even worried about the next day. He was worried about every single moment with this team and, making the biggest impact because, he had to be that guy for that group if they wanted to, make a run and even put their name on the map last season. This group didn't have to do that because of what they did last year, and they returned a lot of those guys, have great guard play, like you said, have a great backcourt too. I think a lot of people sleep on this backcourt at times. When you can run out that kind of depth, you're a pretty tough team to beat. Houston found that out, on a cold Saturday night in December, but this team is just so different. This team is really different. And I think that, with guys like J.D. Davidson and Jaden Shackelford, guys that are going to play at the next level potentially, it's really just person to person. I don't think that, for a guy like Jaden Shackelford, he's thinking about that at this point. He's been with the program for quite some time now. He's committed to winning with this group and, leaving his legacy, finishing it off the right way. For J.D. Davidson, you could maybe, make that argument, but he seems like the kind of player that is just trying to maximize his abilities in any way he can. He's not trying to show off for any scouts or anything like that. He's, trying to make plays, I think, to the best of his ability because he has those tools. He has tools in his bag. A lot of guys on this team don't have. He can jump out of the gym. The way he can pass the ball at times is at NBA caliber level. You would hope, at this point in the season, guys aren't worried about the NBA. If they are, I don't think that they need to be playing for a team that's competing for a championship because you're not going to have a lot of success. I don't think anybody, maybe matches levels like Herb Jones or guys like Ayo Dosunmu, who we saw at Illinois last year that are, just so committed to their program and trying to do everything they can. But, I think it's a different level for everybody. You have to hope that, for each guy on this group, NBA or not, that they are focused on one thing, winning basketball games for Alabama right now and, just find a way to play together with energy.
Yep. Well, we'll find out if Alabama loses to Vanderbilt or Georgia in the first game. Is there a chance they don't get into the NCAA tournament?
Who's that?
Alabama.
Oh, no, they're in. They're in. You beat Gonzaga, you beat Baylor, you beat Houston. You could lose the rest of your games. I mean, you have 7 quad 1 wins. You have more top 5 wins than any team in the country. The best strength of schedule. You didn't even play a quad 4 team. We don't know yet, but you have wins over, probable conference winners, teams like South Dakota State, teams like Louisiana Tech. Really, I think we think of the season as kind of disappointing because in the conference, they just look so terrible against teams they shouldn't have. But overall, this is a very, very solid body of work. Alabama went to Seattle and beat, Gonzaga. Only a few teams have done that. So this team is definitely in. They could lose by 50 points in their second round game, and they're still going to make it. But, where does that put your confidence level? Where does that put your seeding? Those are things we'll have to see. But no, this team is in.
Well, we'll find out how things go when Alabama plays on Thursday. But Trey, you and I will be back on Wednesday for our Alabama News and Notes show. Is there anything that I missed that you wanted to talk about on Monday Night Quarterback?
There's a lot going on right now, but I think we covered just about everything we had on tap for tonight. But we are coming back on Wednesday to talk about a lot more, probably preview that SEC tournament a little bit more. I know they get started up on Thursday there. There'll be the first round games on Wednesday. So we'll know who Alabama is going to play at least. But yeah, man, just another week of the grind. We do have spring practice coming up, thankfully, like we talked about there on Friday. So excited to cover that and, just see how these guys look, see what, Coach Saban has to say. But until then, I think I'm all good. Yep.
And hopefully by then, maybe the NFL will come to their senses and cut that suspension on Calvin Ridley back to what would be sensible than an entire year. Thanks to all of you guys, Chris Allen, everyone in the comments section, Lindsey Black. I saw so many of you got Jarvis in there. Love when Jarvis jumps in, man. Just spinning through there.
Oh, yeah.
Jacob, all you guys, thank you for being part of our show tonight and throwing those comments up there. We do read them. Jackie, roll tide to you. Dana, all you guys, thanks for watching the show. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Chris Daughtry behind the scenes. A lot of great work to help us put this thing together. He's Trey Yanity. I'm Mick Gillispie. Let me remind you guys this, too. Anything Alabama breaking, we're going to have it for you right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Very slow time of the year, but that doesn't mean that we're not covering the team like a blanket. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. And again, our show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Find out more information at westgateal.com. Thanks for watching, guys. Roll Tide.